Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about the differences between night vision and flashlights. So there are two different types of night vision goggles, the NVGs and the GP NVGs as well, and two different types of vision within it. So there's green phosphorus and white phosphorus. I recommend white phosphorus, and I'll just show you here what it kind of looks like right now with this setup. As you can see, I'm on a street. It is a dark street. Lights are brighter, but usually it's not too bad. And then dark areas are pretty visible. This is the green phosphorus, and here's green phosphorus with night vision. Although it is still visible and you can still see in the dark, it's a little bit less quality and it's a little bit harder to see, generally speaking. And I think that's actually also true in real life, as they're not as good as quality as white phosphorus. So I do recommend white phosphorus if you are going with night vision. And when it comes to the GP NVGs, there is something to note where between each part of your vision, there is seams which do create blind spots. As you can see here, what I'm illustrating with the bottles, there is parts of these bottles starting to disappear because there is blind spots between each part of your vision. So you can miss certain important pieces of information, but in comparison to the regular NVGs, which have a much more cone focused vision, they do create dark spots and edges around where you're actually looking. And there can be periods of time where you can miss important information because you kind of tunnel vision where you can see, but in darker locations, you can actually miss important targets, which I just did right here. And it's important to note, whenever you are looking in night vision, when you're aiming down sights, it is a little bit harder to see as night vision does zoom you in a little bit. So you do have to use alternative methods like canting your aim to shoot. Now you can do this pretty instinctually without any type of laser or flashlight. So I do recommend taking an IR laser, or regular laser pointer is fine, but lasers are still awesome either way. But when it comes to IR lasers, which is infrared, they can only be seen under night vision. So enemies won't be able to see it, which can give you a little bit more an advantage for when you are facing multiple targets, as they won't see you as well. When aiming down sights with night vision, especially on a map like hide and seek, it is hard to see as it does blur a lot of your vision. So it's not going to be a crisp image. And usually you don't want to look through scopes whenever you are using night vision. And this is kind of where the flashlight can be better in that circumstance, like on big maps like hide and seek. And as you can see here, the difference between using a flashlight without night vision, it makes it much more crisp of an image, so you can see your target and see where you're shooting. And here it is under white phosphorus night vision. You can still see the target, and white phosphorus is better under night vision, but nothing beats the crisp image of a regular sight with a flashlight over distances. And when it comes to certain sights, flashlights can actually blow out any red dot, especially if it is just a small tiny dot. I do recommend certain sights with this, like the EXP3 or other ones that have a little bit more of a reticle, especially over long distances. It can be tricky to see where you're actually shooting sometimes. And when it comes to using the flashlight, a lot of the time, it's kind of a general purpose tool where you can kind of see everything, and it's good in almost every other situation. But part where it does struggle at is trying to see areas of complete darkness, as you do have to scan and look around the room with your flashlight. But it is important to note, it does offer a little bit of illumination aside from where you're aiming at. As you can see, it's lighting the ceiling a little bit. And whenever you're shining a flashlight through certain areas, targets can see your flashlight and be aware of your presence, which can be a bummer, as they will start to engage you sooner and faster and get stressed a little bit quicker, making them a little bit more aggressive or aware of your presence, and obviously being able to plan or run away. And for big open wide areas, as I said, flashlights do struggle, as there's a lot of information and your flashlight is only so wide to reveal so much of it. In team play, flashlights are really excellent, as if everyone's clearing a certain section of the room, they can all clear their kind of cone of vision of their flashlight. But when it comes to night vision, it just reveals kind of a much wider range of vision, which allows for better clearing in darker areas. And when it comes to using a flashlight, you can see traps a little bit better in darker locations, but you can still see traps with night vision a lot of the time, so there's no real winner here. So the question is, which one should you be using, night vision or flashlight? Now, when it comes to a flashlight, they're general all-purpose in all maps. They're good for dark corners. They're good for dark hallways, areas that are very narrow with no lighting, but they also allow you to see what you're aiming at accurately, as lasers are a little bit harder to see. When it comes to flashlights, they also allow you to inform teammates through doors. Say if you pushed up a little further, you can communicate your presence to them, so there's no friendly fire. But flashlights do lack in big, dark, wide rooms because it only illuminates a small area. Also, it does blind people under night vision if you aren't using night vision. Flashlights can also alert enemies, and it also competes with the laser pointer. So if you like using the laser pointer like I do, you do lose that option. And it's usually bad for maps that are completely dark with wide rooms and areas, as you can't illuminate the whole entire map and have the best awareness. Then when it comes to night vision, it's great because it illuminates an entire area. As for maps that are completely dark with minimal lighting, you can use an IR laser with night vision without alerting enemies, unlike the flashlight, and you can see your team's IR lasers to communicate where you're covering and identification. And you always have night vision goggles. There's no competing slot for night vision, but night vision is not usable in all locations. It's bad for maps with variable lighting, so like a lot of dark corners, but the rest of the room is illuminated, and it can obscure vision when others are using flashlights. Also, you can't communicate when you are using night vision if you're using an infrared laser if your team doesn't have night vision on, because they won't be able to see it. Also, when using night vision, it blurs your optics, leading to poor accuracy and aim, so you're more or less forced to use lasers or canted sights under night vision, as it is a little bit harder to use optics under night vision. So realistically speaking, is it night vision or is it flashlights? Well, they both come with positives and negatives. The more important thing to note is how you want to play and who you're playing with. If you're playing by yourself, you really don't need to worry about which one you're choosing. You just choose whatever you want. If you're playing with a team that's coordinated, you can choose what you want altogether. If everyone wants to go on a dark map, use infrared laser to communicate, that's awesome. If one person's using infrared lasers and everyone else is using flashlights, you should probably use a flashlight as well, as you are able to communicate with your team and you're not blowing out anyone's night vision, essentially making them less effective because they can't see as well. So really it just comes down to, if you're with a team, how you want to coordinate. If you're playing by yourself, you can choose whichever one you want. If you're newer and you don't want to, and you can't decide, using a flashlight is fine, and then using night vision whenever on bigger maps. You can use when playing by yourself, you can use a flashlight in every scenario. So if you are a newer player, you can just stick with the flashlight and aim down sights. If you know the maps a little bit better, night vision is awesome because you can figure out whether or not there's going to be dark areas if you're a little bit more experienced, and you can coordinate with your team. So which one's better? Well, not by a large margin, but the flashlight is probably better simply because you can use it in every scenario, where night vision, you can't use it in every scenario. Night vision usually requires a bit more coordination, but when everyone is using night vision, it is an excellent tool and probably even superior when you are able to use night vision effectively. Say, for example, when it's a completely dark map. So if you're coordinated, night vision is going to be better on certain maps. If you're not coordinated or with random people or playing solo or newer, I do recommend the flashlight. You can use it in so many scenarios and communicate in so many different ways with it. But with that said, realistically, the flashlight isn't really much better than night vision. And the same way with night vision, it's not really much better than the flashlight. It just depends on the specific scenario that you're in. And you should really just test it out and see which one you like the most. But that's it for the video. Thanks for watching and have a good day.